Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got two replays in the American Tier 8 Preferential Premium Heavy Tank, the Bog Horror Mutant M6, or the M6A2E1, I think it is what it's called. It's the Mutant 6, it's the Bog Horror. So, if you did like the video, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe down below, as it really does help out the channel. And yes, the Boggy Bogger. So, the Boggy Bogger is a tank that has preferential matchmaking. If you don't know what preferential matchmaking is, it basically means this thing sees -2 +1. So, it will only ever see tier 9s at worst. And since it is preferential matchmaking, a lot of the time, these preferential tanks seem to only really be top tier. They do see tier 9s, obviously, but it just, in my experience, they tend to be top tier a lot more than they are ever bottom tier. And that's probably just because of the matchmaking around them and, you know, tier 8 matchmaking in general, being that a lot of them tend to get tier 10. So, it's quite nice to have that preferential matchmaking. And as a tank, it's alright. Yeah, it's alright. It's not a bad tank, it's also just not a great tank. It's one of those vehicles where you feel like you should have better armor than you do. And that in a matchup like this, it seems to work perfectly well. But as soon as you go against people that know what they're doing, your armor tends to deteriorate very quickly. And also, if you face anyone that's got about 250 plus pen, they just butcher your poor tank's armor. And you go from having armor that feels like, oh, this is quite nice, to armor that's just like, ha! Nah, I'm just going to be rubbish now. And you get penned all the time, and it's really frustrating to play with the Bog Horror. The gun's pretty decent. It's basically the same gun that used to be on the T32 before they've changed the T32's guns and stuff like that. Or buffed it, I should say, really. And that is that you've got 198 pen on your standard AP pen, with 245 pen on the premium APCR, which, again, is good enough to go through everything that you're going to face at tier 9, 8, 7, 6, etc. So the penetration on this tank is pretty nice. 320 alpha is pretty good as well. You do have an 8.67 second reload, which is 2.2k DPM, which is low. It does have low DPM. And you've got 945 meters a second shell velocity on the AP, which is below average, with 1,181 meters a second shell velocity on the premium APCR, which is just above, just above average. You got 1.46 accuracy during movement and 0.98 accuracy during rotation with the build that I run, which is actually pretty good for this kind of heavy tank, and that means that the gun doesn't bloom out all that much, and you've got a 1.93 second aim time as well, which means that you don't have to sit around for too long to actually get the gun aimed in. And as you've been seeing in this replay, the aim circle never really gets that big, and you're pretty much always ready to snap the shots in, which is pretty good. The only thing that makes this gun feel slightly derpy is that shell velocity. At times it makes it feel like a bit of a struggle at range. You do have a 29 km/h top speed, which is another problem for the Bog Horror, with a 14 km/h reverse speed, which has 14.34 horsepower per ton ratio. You've got 960 horsepower engine, which means you are fairly slow. You are fairly slow as a heavy tank. 29 km an hour is slow, and that means you just sort of trundle about the battlefield, which can be a bit of a pain. It can be a bit of a pain in the old Bog Horror. You do have 486 meters of view range, though, which is pretty decent, and that means that you can, well, it's good for a tier 8, which means you can spot for yourself quite nicely as a heavy tank, and you will get out-spotted, naturally, by really good camo things, but the moment they shoot at you, yeah, you're going to be able to see them, which is pretty good. You do have 27.98 degrees a second turret rotation speed, which is slow as well, and that's with the build that I run, trying to help it out as much as possible, so you really want to try and help the turret traverse out as much as you can with this vehicle, because it is very slow on turret traverse. And as you can see, with the ridgeline we've been playing on, we have got 10 degrees of gun depression, which is lovely, and that means that we can work a ridgeline absolutely fantastically and just have a lot of fun. So what do I run in terms of a crew and equipment on the old Bog Horror? Well, I run Born Leader, Rapid Reload, Sixth Sense, Situational Awareness, Steady Aim, Snapshot, Run and Gun, Track Mechanic, Rapid Aim, with the Advanced Loader, Gun Stabilizer, and Optics. Optics to be able to get that 486 meters of view range, the Gun Stabilizer to get the accuracy during rotation and movement down as low as possible, and the Advanced Loader to get the best DPM I can possibly get, because it is dreadful if not. Rapid Aim to make the turret traverse better, with all 3 gun perks to make the gun as good as it can be, because obviously, like I say, the turret traverse is poor, and you really want to focus on making this gun as good as it can be for the Bog Horror. So as you've just seen in that first game, we finished with the epic victory, 6 kills, 4.3k damage, 2.2k assists, that's 6k combined, ace tanker, sniper, high caliber, the top gun, with the 2076 base XP. A really nice game there for the Bog Horror on Wide Park. And yeah, it can be a pretty effective tank in those sorts of situations where the tanks don't have quite the penetration. As soon as anything has like 240, 250 plus pen, and they start hitting your turret roof, they just go through it. They start going through the upper plate at random angles as well, which is because, you know, the upper plate armor on this vehicle is really good. It's 191mm thick, and it is very well sloped, but it just starts to get butchered, and you start going, oh, my armor was good, but now it really isn't, which can be a bit annoying. Plus, your turret roof, by the way, around the cupola is only 25mm thick, which means that most guns you're going to face will overmatch your roof, especially if you're on a slight downslope and they can just see the tippy top of your roof where the cupola is. If they shoot the roof, they will just go straight through it, because, you know, effectively, with what caliber guns there are in the game, 90mm plus caliber guns will just go straight through the roof, and that is, well, pure pain. And I mean, it's actually 76mm guns in general will go through the roof of this tank with the overmatch mechanic, which is kind of sad for the old Bogger. The other thing that is a bit of a sad time for the Bog Horror is, like I say, you do have 10 degrees of gun depression, which, yes, is great, and that means you are flexible on a ridgeline. But you've got the problem of, this tank is so tall. Look how big. This is a big boy. It is a very tall tank, and that means that you do struggle to get the gun down in certain situations where other 10 degrees of gun depression tanks will be fine. Also means that you're very easy to spot, and it's quite easy to get shots at you and overexpose in situations where you thought you might be okay. It's just one of those tanks that's a bit tall and has a bit of a problem in that regard. So we're on the second replay, and this second replay is on Dukla Pass, and we are currently up to 613 damage. And these, well, that's a Cromit. That's a poor old Cromit. That's a stock Cromwell, if you can't tell. If you stock Cromwell, a stock Comet. If you can't tell, if you look at a Comet and it looks like a Cromwell or a fatter Cromwell, it's stock. That's how the Comet should look in that Banshee. And yeah, the other Cromit was, well, he had the Cromwell turret at a sad time. That's the 240 pen problem. 248 pen from that T-34. He just went straight through the upper plate. As you can see right there, straight through the upper plate. Right there. Now, he was firing standard as well. That's 248 penetration going straight through our upper plate and absolutely laughing at us. And that's what I mean by the fact that if you end up in those matchmaking situations where there's quite a few tier 9s and stuff like that that have that sort of penetration, your armor just goes from, oh, this is pretty nice, to penetration, penetration, penned. Armor means nothing. And you sit there going, you know. And there's not much the Bogger can do to that either, because, well, the Bogger's really slow. So you have to trundle to the position, and once you get to that position, you've trundled to it. Yeah, you kind of get stuck, and then you just get wrecked, and you sit there crying your eyes out as you're going, I thought I had armor! What? You know, and yeah, you just die. And it's a sad time for the Bogger. So we've managed to shut down the IS Desmond 2-2. We're up to 2.4k damage now with that shot into the Carnarvon Action 10. And it's Mr. Carnarvon. Do you want to sit there and give me your lower plate? I will quite happily farm it up with my very poor DPM. He aims at our cupola, but hits the little ribbed section on the turret, which meant that it ends up ricocheting, because that section where the cupola is on the direct front, because that's the thing with the Bog Horror's turret, it is really weird, because it's got an angled slopey section, which is next to the cupola, which is 63mm thick, which means pretty much every gun will just ricochet off of it. But then the flat section where the cupola is, that's the 25mm thickness, which is what you can see just on top of the Bogger. So we're up to 4 kills with 3.2k damage, 122 assists. There's only 4 tanks left. There's the GW Panther, who's spotted in a very unorthodox position there at F0, but okay. Oh, yeah, it is what it is. And we've got the Barask that is currently spotted at E3. And we are going to trundle towards these guys to see if we can get any more damage out of this game. And this is where the Bogger does feel like a pain. We are so slow. But we hit that shot on the move on the Barask. That was actually quite nicely aimed. And we got good RNG as well. And that's where the accuracy during rotation and movement being so good is very nice for the Bogger. Because, well, the aim circle really wasn't that big. Which means the error the margin for error for that shot to miss wasn't actually too bad. He penned us with Hesh. Oof. That Dragon pens us with Hesh through the side, and that's because we were angled. And that is a problem for the Mutant as well, or for the Bog Horror, is that if you aren't facing someone flat on, your armor again becomes absolutely useless because the turret, the cheeks of the hull become easier to pen, and also the side armor is basically the M6. It's the M6 tier 6 heavy, and it's only 66mm the thickness, and people will go through it with relative ease at any sort of angle. Well, at a decent angle, I should say. So if I'm like this and I'm looking over the side of my turret, my tank with the turret at the angle I just was, and people can see the side armor just like the Dragon had, they will pen that fairly easily, and it's just a sad time for the Mutant. It's a tank that I don't particularly enjoy. The one thing it does do well is make silver, though, because you have 167% silver bonus in this tank, which is really nice, and that means that you do make a good amount of silver. But yeah, it's a tank that I don't enjoy particularly. Can you have a good time in it? Yeah. But the downsides to it and stuff like that just make it go, I just don't enjoy it. Plus, the gun used to be far worse, by the way. That Earthshaker goes straight through us. Like, this is where I'm saying the armor sometimes feels like, you feel like a god, and then sometimes the armor doesn't work. That Earthshaker with 230 odd pen just went, nah, lol. I will now just go through the front of your vehicle because I can laugh at it. You know, his 236 pen just said, lol, I'll go through that. And you can see through the upper plate yet again. That's where he went through. Yeah, it's just, yeah, the pain of the Bog Horror. But we finished that game with the 7 kills, 5.2k damage, 714 assistance, the ace tank of the Devastator, the Top Gun, the High Caliber, with the 2.1k base XP. A really nice game there for the Boggy Bogger. It's a tank that I don't particularly think is worth picking up, unless you can get it for free out of the Monster Mash game mode, which a lot of people might have earned in the past, or probably next year at this point, because it'll probably be in the rotation for next year's Monster Mash, or Monster Hunter, I should say. And yeah, it's just like, I don't particularly enjoy myself. So as always, everybody, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
A great success.